local file inclusion vulnerability. I will apply my example or my crafted example to DVWA or DAM vulnerable web application. So in this lesson, I'm not gonna explain to you how to implement or apply local file inclusion, because we can find a bunch of examples on the internet on how to exploit local file inclusion vulnerability. But in this lesson or in this video, I will show you guys how to spot this vulnerability, right? And how to take advantage of local file inclusion from only viewing critical files on the target system into taking shell access or getting reverse shell back to your system. Now, I know this could be accomplished using remote file inclusion, but in the newer versions of PHP, guys, most of the remote file inclusion vulnerabilities are patched because they allow include URL in the PHP configurations. Most of the versions are set to disable this option, which means you cannot use or you cannot include remote file from your system back to the victim machine. Now, I'm using DVWA here. Okay. Now, first, I'm going to show you why the system is vulnerable to local file inclusion. That's first. Second, we're going to see how the local file inclusion works. Third, we're going to use this vulnerability, guys, to connect back to our system. Now, let's go to the Metasploitable here. Let me remove this. Okay. Now, this is Metasploitable, guys. Now, the vulnerable page is index.php, guys. All right. So here we are in the vulnerable page. So basically, why this page is vulnerable? Now, it starts from here. So the dirt starts from here. Require once. All right. So it's requiring the user to put a file or input a file. So basically, it goes after the fi over here, right? And then the source, and then the parameter. Now, if we go down, as you can see, there is include file. So the file is input from the user, all right? Or in this our example, it's the parameter which references the file, right? And here, after the user inputs the file or enters the file or requests the file, the PHP page over here takes the file directly and includes it, which is improper use of, like, it's not a recommended PHP practice, because even before including the file, you should do some sanitizing on the file. So you should make sure that the user has not typed like prohibited parameters, double quotes, braces, these kind of prohibited characters or the double characters, right? You should also make sure that the characters that the user has sent to your browser and stored in the file variable here are only within an allowed list of variables, right? So if you see here include file in any source of any page, and the file parameter over here or the file variable over here has not gone under any kind of sanitization, filtration, or any input validation, then the code is vulnerable to local file inclusion, which means that the PHP code over here takes the file, okay, from the user, and it can execute whatever inside the variable, which is file over here. So if the file over here contains a PHP code, it can execute that PHP code without asking any question, without taking any filter on the file. So basically, this allows a multitude of vulnerabilities, multitude of attack vectors. So basically, include file without sanitizing the file means we have local file inclusion vulnerability. Not only that, if we manage to manipulate or modify a file on the system, right, include a code in that file just pay close attention to that. Modify a current file on the system, right? And include a code in that. Okay, it must be PHP file, right? Include a code in that PHP file, and then you use local file inclusion vulnerability to make the vulnerable code over here. Okay, opens that file and then execute the script or the code you have just included in the modified file, right? So let's see how this works. Okay, so to see how this works, we go back. All right, so we have the vulnerable page, right? So, okay, it's saying flat out this page is vulnerable to local file inclusion. But before, you need to make sure you need to take a look at the source code. So after taking a look at the source code, we saw that the include function has been used directly without doing any filter, any sanitization on the file, which is here, right? So whatever we type over here is not being sanitized, is not being filtered, right? So yes, we can traverse the file system, we can navigate the file system freely. Like for example, we can traverse to etc password. Oh, so it's saying here. Let me refresh the page, I think. So page. All right, so now, so far, all of you know how to do this. I know. You know how to do directory traversal and use local file inclusion vulnerability to navigate through sensitive file systems and sensitive files in the system. All right, this is easy. Now, what is not easy, guys, is how to make collateral move from that into system compromise. How to do that? Yes, you can navigate through the file system. You can view all sorts of files. But how you can use that, or how you can take an effective advantage of the vulnerable process of input sanitization, right? So the input is not sanitized. What I can do about this? Well, all I need to do, guys, is I need to modify or insert my code into a file system, right? And then I'm going to use local file inclusion to navigate to that file, execute that because there is no input sanitization. Now, my target will be, the target in most cases is the Apache log file. Let's take a look. So var log Apache 2. Well, so as you can see here, I was able to view the content of the access log, right? So now we can see what is in the access log file. Okay, that's right, but it is not enough. And as you know, everything I send to the web server, okay, is being logged, written, recorded in the access log. So where I can go with this? Well, I can send the web server a script, a small script or a small PHP script, guys, that executes a system command, right? I know this will not be executed. It will be registered here. It will be written in the file or the log file. Now I want to show you how this will work. So basically, what I'm going to do here, guys, is I'm going to go back. I'm going to show you what I did. So basically, that's it. Okay, let me copy that. Okay, now let's clear all of that. Okay, so what I need to do now, I need to insert my to be executed PHP script in the log file. Why? Because this log file, I will be able to navigate to that log file, and because the include function in the vulnerable code doesn't sanitize the inputs, I can then make that vulnerable code execute the script that I'm about to insert now in the log file. How's that? So let's connect the web server, insert that. So nc NV, the IP is. Okay, I'm connected. Let me paste my script. Okay, so here, guys. Oh, okay. So here I have a PHP script, guys, that execute a system command over here. And the system command that will be executed is everything that will be passed to the variable CMD here, right? So my variable here is CMD. And whatever value I feed into the CMD will be executed. Now, let's enter. Great. Now, what happened is I didn't execute anything. I just sent a request to the web server, and this request has been logged. Let's see this over here and make sure that our code has been logged, not executed. Well, so let me, I hope I can read through this. Let's see here, where is our PHP script? Well, it seems to be somewhere around here. I mean, it should be here. Okay, help me, please. Okay, if we didn't find it, we would make sure. Okay, I think it's here. Look, these are my these are my footprints actually, because I tried this before. Now, okay, no problem. I mean, it's hard to read through that, but one way to make sure that, I mean, I'm damn sure it is logged because it is a request and everything is logged in the log file. Now, no problem. If you don't find it or if you cannot read through that, you can make sure by executing trying to execute what you sent to the log file. If it is successful, yeah, then yes, it's logged. I mean, it is logged, yeah. Okay. So now the next step, guys, is to what? The next step. The next step is to taking advantage of the poor input validation and execute whatever I sent to the log file. Now, what I'm going to do here, I'm going to put and, okay, cmd equal, let's say, let's try something. Who am I? Who am I? Oh, great. So as you can see, the code has been executed. Now what we have done so far, we have poisoned the log file, right? So as you know, every web server in the world, in every case, whatever you send to the web server gets logged, right? That is not wrong. This is something, I mean, this is not wrong, right? So now the vulnerable part is this, or the wrong part here that shouldn't have happened is this one, or this one, all of it, okay? Now, if you have local file inclusion vulnerability, okay, then most probably any attacker can poison the log file and execute whatever a script that they would send to the log file, right? Because if there is a local file vulnerability in the web server, most probably there are high chances that also the user input is not sanitized. I mean, in terms of the files that's being sent by the users, the file names, I mean. So what does that mean is you need to, I'm going to explain that later. I'm going to confuse you now. Okay. So let's now establish a listener 4545, right? Let's connect back to our machine and get a shell. Now, instead of OMI, I'm going to write nc plus my IP address, which is 133, and here the port, which is, I forgot, 4545. Go back, and plus, here we export the shell or the bash shell to our target system, so we get, the shell. Okay, so -e bin bash. Okay, so the victim machine, we got limited shell back from the victim machine. ID www data. Okay, so you successfully have escalated your attack from local file inclusion to remote shell access without the need to use remote file inclusion. Now let's go to the interesting part, how to protect yourself from that. Now guys, the first thing you need to do is to go back to your vulnerable code. Okay, this is the vulnerable code. So here, what I need to do here, now before I include the file, I need something like, right, something like remote file equal, right? Or before remote file, I'm going to need to use the method of arrays. Okay, so array, something like, I mean, it's not the exact code, but you get the idea. Or remote file equal array, and here you put the list of allowed files to be passed by the user. Let's say config php page php, and then file, not file, don't like this word. Okay, about. All right. Now after that, you're gonna use if. Okay, you're gonna use if to make sure that the remote file or the file variable here, or the content of this file, okay, not sure, yeah. I mean, you need to make sure that the file is within the range of this array. I mean, the file must be config php, page php, or about.php. If it doesn't satisfy this criteria or this condition, we're gonna like make an exception, error exception, or we're gonna direct the user to the main page whatsoever. Let me remove that. I don't want to mess up the machine. That's how you patch this vulnerability. I mean, there are many information about that. I'm going to link to you one of the pages that lays down an approach of how to sanitize the input, if it was a file, using the method of arrays. So you have a whitelist of files, all right, that you can allow users to navigate through using a file input. And if the file that they have submitted or navigated through doesn't exist in the whitelist array that you have previously defined, and then you're gonna like error or whatsoever, you direct them to the main page. So let's not save this. Okay. So basically that's how you do it, guys. Okay. So basically what we have done here is we took advantage of the log file, we poisoned the log file, and we made the vulnerable code execute whatever we send to the log file. That's called log file poisoning, or Apache web server log file poisoning. It is not enough to, you cannot poison a log file without a vulnerable code somewhere in your web server, somewhere in your, somewhere through your file systems. You can't poison the log file. You can't poison any file in your system unless there is a file in the chain that facilitates the execution of vulnerable codes that might be sent to your log file. So your log file is not the problem. Don't worry about your log file. It logs everything. It logs the bad guys and the good guys. So the log file is not the issue here. The log file has been used as, a mediator, right? Or has been used as, like a leverage, okay? But it is not the problem. You need to inspect your main code, okay? Make sure that your main code, inspects, sanitizes, and filters everything that is being sent from the user, all right? So if I spend all my days sending vulnerable codes, sending, shells to your web server, and all of these, um, all of these exploits, all of these codes I send to your log file, all these are meant to, compromise your system. If these codes are not exploited or are not, executed by one of your vulnerable files on your system, all of my efforts are in vain, Just don't focus on the log file. Just make sure that your code sanitizes all of the user input. So I hope that's somewhat helpful. And as usual, see you in the next video.